You're watching Story Scroll. Real stories, raw emotions, and endings you'll never forget. Let's scroll into today's tale.
I never thought I'd be the kind of person posting something like this on Reddit. I've been a lurker for years, reading other people's disasters and quietly thanking the universe that my life was normal, boring even, but stable. Or at least I thought it was. My wife and I have been married for a little over 7 years. No kids yet, but we talked about it often. House, shared routines, inside jokes, Sunday groceries, the kind of life that doesn't make headlines but feels safe. I genuinely believed we were solid. Not perfect, but solid. About 3 months ago, something shifted. Subtle at first. She became distant in a way I couldn't quite name. Conversations felt shorter. Eye contact lingered less. She started guarding her phone like it was classified information. If I walked into a room, she'd tilt the screen away or suddenly remember she needed to do something else. Then there was the busyness. Late nights, work emergencies, weekend team dinners I wasn't invited to. New clothes appear in her closet, sharper, more expensive, not really her style. When I asked, she told me I was being paranoid, that I was reading into things. I wanted to believe her. Last Monday morning, as I was getting ready for work, she stopped me in the hallway. She didn't smile, didn't frown either, just neutral. "We need to talk later," she said. My stomach dropped. "Okay, about what?" "Just bring your ID with you after work." That was it. No explanation. No reassurance. I spent the entire day with a knot in my chest. ID? Why would I need my ID? I ran through possibilities like a broken record. Maybe she was refinancing something. Maybe a joint account issue. Maybe, this was my hopeful thought, a surprise like updating a will or something responsible and boring. I didn't once think divorce. Not seriously. When I pulled into the parking lot, she texted me. I realized it wasn't a bank or office building. It was a law firm. Clean glass front. Brass lettering. My pulse started pounding. Inside, the receptionist looked up and asked my name before I could even open my mouth. That should have been my first real warning. She led me down a hallway and opened a conference room door. My wife was already seated at the table. She didn't look up when I walked in. Next to her sat a man in a suit with a leather folder open in front of him. Papers were stacked neatly, aligned like someone had taken time to make sure everything was perfect. I stood there for a second too long, trying to process the scene. "Have a seat," the man said politely. "He said, this meeting is to formalize a legal separation," he continued. "These documents outline asset division, living arrangements, and next steps." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain refused to catch up. "A separation?" I said, turning to my wife. "What is this?" She finally looked at me then. Her expression wasn't angry or sad. It was impatient, like I was holding up a line. "It's straightforward," she said. "Just read it and sign." I picked up the first page, my hand shaking. Legal language blurred together. Dates, percentages, clauses I didn't understand. "I need time to go through this," I said. "I didn't even know this was." She cut me off. "It's basic," she snapped. "There's nothing complicated. Just sign it." I looked up at the attorney. "Can I take this home or have a lawyer review it?" That's when she laughed. A short, sharp sound. "With what money?" she said. "You don't have money for lawyers anyway." The attorney suddenly found the table very interesting. Wouldn't meet my eyes. That's when I noticed something that made my chest feel hollow. Her signature was already on every page. Not only that, the dates were filled in. Boxes checked. Everything decided. This wasn't a discussion. It was an execution. I flipped through the pages faster now, panic rising. The terms were brutal. The house, savings, even things I'd brought into the marriage. It felt like someone had gone through my life with a highlighter and decided what parts one was allowed to keep. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked quietly. She sighed, exasperated. "Why does that matter?" Because suddenly everything clicked. The late nights, the phone, the new clothes, the emotional distance, all the moments I'd swallowed my doubts and told myself I was being insecure. I looked at her and asked a question I'd been avoiding for months. "Is there someone else?" She didn't deny it, didn't confirm it either, just leaned back in her chair and said, "I outgrew you. You're replaceable." That sentence did something to me. I felt humiliated, exposed, like the version of me who thought he was loved had been naive to the point of embarrassment. But I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just nodded. Okay, I said. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, surprised. I picked up the pen. She leaned forward, relief already creeping into her face. The attorney slid the documents closer. I signed. Every page. Carefully. Slowly. When I finished, she smiled. Not a big one. Just a small, satisfied smirk. Like she'd won something. The attorney gathered the papers, slid copies toward me, and started explaining next steps. I didn't hear a word. I stood up. My wife looked confused. Where are you going? I'm done, I said. I walked out of the room without another word. Out of the building. Into my car. I sat there for a long time with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. I don't know if I just destroyed my life or saved it. Update 1. A lot of people asked what happened after I walked out of that law office. Honestly, nothing dramatic. And that's what made it unbearable for her. That first night, I didn't go home. I couldn't. The idea of sleeping in the same bed, touching the same light switches, breathing the same air as someone who had planned my exit like a business transaction. It made my skin crawl. I slept in my car. Not because I had to, but because I didn't want to explain anything to anyone yet. I parked in a quiet lot, reclined the seat, and stared at the ceiling until exhaustion finally won. The next night was a cheap hotel. The night after that, a friend's couch. I rotated places like someone trying not to leave footprints. I didn't call my wife. I didn't text. I didn't ask why. And that silence? It ate at her. 2 days after the meeting, my phone lit up. You didn't even fight for us. I stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't sad. It wasn't apologetic. It was angry. Like I'd failed to perform my assigned role. More texts followed. 7 years and you just walk away. So that's it? You don't even care? I didn't respond. I realized something uncomfortable but clarifying. She hadn't wanted a conversation. She'd wanted resistance. Tears. Bargaining. Something to confirm that she mattered enough to hurt me loudly. Instead, I disappeared. 3 days later, I sat in a different office. Smaller. Less polished. A manila folder instead of a leather one. My lawyer listened without interrupting as I explained everything, from the bring your ID comment to the moment I signed. When I finished, he leaned back and exhaled slowly. First, he said, you were under no obligation to sign that day. I swallowed. I figured. Second, he continued, flipping through the documents. These papers are extremely one-sided. He pointed things out I hadn't even noticed in my shock. Clauses buried in dense paragraphs. Language that assumed fault without stating it outright. Timelines that conveniently favored her. And third, he said carefully, her attorney should not have allowed that meeting to proceed the way it did. You were ambushed. That matters. I asked him the question that had been looping in my head since I left the parking lot. Did I screw myself? He shook his head. No, you surprised her. That's not the same thing. He explained that rushed signatures, especially under emotional pressure, were often challenged. That my compliance didn't mean consent in the way she thought it did. That she'd expected me to panic, not comply calmly and vanish. She thought she was closing a deal, he said. She didn't expect you to step off the board. A week after the meeting, a mutual friend reached out. Someone I hadn't spoken to much lately, which now made sense. Hey, they wrote, I don't know what's going on between you and your wife, but I think you deserve to know she's been seeing someone from work. My chest tightened, but I wasn't surprised. I asked for details. It wasn't a rumor. It was specific. A co-worker, senior to her. The kind of relationship that starts with mentorship and ends with secrecy. They told me it had been going on for months. That people had noticed. That the timing lined up almost perfectly with when she'd started pulling away from me. I didn't confront her. Instead, I asked my lawyer what mattered. Proof, he said. Timelines. And proof came easier than I expected. Old shared cloud backups she'd forgotten about. Deleted messages that weren't really deleted. Calendar entries that didn't match her explanations. When I laid it all out, my lawyer nodded. In our jurisdiction, he said, this changes things. He explained how infidelity, especially when it overlapped with legal maneuvering, could affect settlements, how it reframed intent, how it raised questions about bad faith. 2 days later, my phone rang. Her name flashed across the screen. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Her voice was different, softer, unsteady. "I didn't think you'd leave like that," she said. I didn't respond. "I mean, I thought you'd call or come back. We can adjust the paperwork if you want." Adjust, not apologize. I was emotional, she added quickly. We both were. Maybe we rushed things. I kept my voice flat. "Please talk to my lawyer." There was a pause, then a sharp inhale. "You already have a lawyer?" "Yes." Her confidence cracked audibly. After that call, the tone of her messages changed completely. No more accusations, just nervous attempts at friendliness. References to shared memories. Subtle fishing for reassurance. None of it worked. My lawyer sent a formal notice to hers, challenging asset division, highlighting the timeline discrepancies, requesting disclosures related to her workplace relationship. Within 48 hours, her attorney responded. They wanted mediation. They wanted time. They wanted to slow things down. I sat in my lawyer's office as he summarized it all, feeling something settle in my chest that I hadn't felt in weeks. Control, not revenge, not triumph, just steadiness. I realized then that the moment I'd quietly signed and walked out had done more damage to her plan than any argument ever could have. She built a narrative where she was decisive and powerful, and I was reactive and desperate. Instead, I became unpredictable, and that terrified her. I'll update again when mediation is done. For now, I'm okay. More okay than I expected to be. Sometimes not fighting is the loudest move you can make. Final update. This will probably be my last update. Not because everything ended perfectly, but because it ended clearly. And clarity, I've learned, is its own kind of peace. Mediation happened 2 weeks ago. It took most of the day. Neutral office. Neutral furniture. Neutral language carefully chosen to avoid admitting fault while still acknowledging it. I sat at one end of the table with my lawyer. She sat across from me with hers. For the first time since the ambush meeting, she wouldn't look at me at all. The outcome was fair. Not miraculous. Not devastating. Just fair. She didn't get the house. Not even close. It turned out the equity split she'd assumed was a given wasn't supported once timelines and intent were examined. The savings were divided based on contribution, not convenience. The accounts she'd already mentally spent, off the table. The affair partner, the confident presence behind her sudden certainty, vanished somewhere in the middle of this process. Apparently, being the future loses its appeal once lawyers start asking for records and workplaces start asking questions. He was gone before mediation ended. No dramati gudvie, just absence. At one point, the mediator asked if either of us wanted to say anything directly. I kept it simple. "I never raised my voice," I said. "I didn't need to." She flinched at that. Halfway through the session, something shifted. The controlled composure she'd worn like armor finally cracked. When her attorney explained, again, that certain outcomes weren't possible anymore, she started crying. Not quietly, not gracefully, the kind of crying that comes from losing a story you were sure you were the hero of. She looked at me, then really looked at me, like she was seeing a stranger. "You tricked me," she said suddenly. "You made me think you were just giving up." The room went still. I waited a second before answering. Not for effect, just to be sure my voice would stay steady. "You told me to sign," I said. "I did. That was it." No argument followed. There was nothing left to argue about. The divorce was finalized shortly after. Papers filed. Timelines set. A clean ending to something that had already been over long before the law caught up to it. The aftermath was quieter, but not invisible. Word got around her workplace. It always does. People noticed the sudden absence of the man she'd been so publicly attached to. They noticed the legal meetings, the stress, the way her confidence evaporated. Opportunities cooled. Invitations slowed. Friends who had once nodded along with her version of events started pulling back when details didn't line up. When we grew apart, turned into, well, it's complicated. When sympathy required too much selective memory. Her lifestyle shrank. Smaller place, tighter budget, fewer options. She tried to present it as a fresh start, but fresh starts usually come with hope. This one came with bitterness. I heard through mutuals that she tried to frame the divorce as mutual, amicable, adult. But stories fall apart when too many people know the truth. As for me, I focused on things I could control. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I didn't want to carry silent damage into whatever came next. I learned how often I'd minimized my own discomfort just to keep peace. How easily I'd accepted confusion instead of asking hard questions. I went back to the gym, not obsessively, just consistently. I remembered what it felt like to inhabit my own body without tension. I reconnected with friends I drifted from without realizing it. People who didn't ask for explanations, who just said, "You're here. That's enough." And somewhere in all of that, I noticed something surprising. I wasn't angry anymore. Not numb. Not resigned. Just finished. Looking back, the most powerful moment in this entire story wasn't the mediation or the legal reversal or even uncovering the affair. It was the moment I stood up in that first law office, said nothing, and walked out. I didn't argue her version of reality. I didn't beg to be understood. I didn't perform pain for someone who had already decided I was replaceable. I chose silence, and silence turned out to be strength. So that's where I'll end this. The day she told me, just sign it, she thought she won. She didn't realize I was walking away with my dignity intact. Thanks to everyone who followed along. Take care of yourselves, and don't let anyone rush you into signing away your worth.
Thanks for watching Story Scroll. Hit that bell and stay tuned for the next story that will move your heart.